पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणं मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। So yesterday we saw about sense management and why it is so important in the spiritual path. Now today's verses, there are two beautiful verses here, 62 and 63, which give us 8 steps of fall. That how a human being from the state of peace and freedom, because of lack of sense management, becomes a victim of the sense pleasure, sense objects, and destroys oneself. Let us see these today. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha Sangasteshu pajayate Sangat sanjayate kamaha Kamat krodho bhijayate Krodhat bhavati sammohaha Sammohat smriti vibhramaha Smriti bhramshat buddhinashaha Buddhinashat pranashyati. So 8 steps are given here how the human being falls. First step is dhyayato vishayan, brooding over the sense objects. Sangasteshu upajayate, attachment towards it arises. So first step is brooding, second step is attachment. Sangat sanjayate kamaha, when one gets attached to it, then one wants to possess it. Mentally one has got attached to it, then there is a desire to possess it. So that is the third step. When the desire is not fulfilled, then krodho vichayate, anger will arise. If it is fulfilled, insecurity, fear or greed, either of these may arise. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. So first step is brooding, second step attachment, third step desire, fourth step anger. Fifth step, delusion. When the person gets angry, one is completely confused, deluded, one doesn't see things as they are, imagines much more. That delusion, fifth step. Delusion makes a person lose memory. So even though one knows what is right, what is wrong, what is harmful, one cannot follow that. So memory loss happens. Memory loss, when it happens, one cannot discriminate. That is the 7th step. Smriti bhramshat buddhinasha. Intelligence, discrimination, all that doesn't work. Buddhinasha pranashyati. Finally a person perishes. These are 8 steps. Given here in a very systematic way, Many times one would find that it is not found even in psychology. The way in which this description is given, even psychology may not give us that clear description. So here let us see what it means. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha. It starts by brooding over the sense objects. That way all of us are expert meditators. Everyone meditates and there is no problem in meditation. Only difficulty is on what we meditate. We may sit to meditate on Shiva, but the mind goes to something else. Then the mind starts brooding. And this brooding, Swami Chinmayananda used to say that to think is to use the mind, to brood is to abuse the mind. What is this brooding? Brooding means associating myself with that object and fancifully imagining happiness. When I have the latest, what is it? Okay, iPhone 5S. It has not come in India. It has not come, right? Yeah, another month to come. I will have the first copy of iPhone 5S. Nobody else will have. I already booked. And when I walk into that particular party, New Year bash it will be, and I will have the latest iPhone 5S, and people will be stunned. Wow! Brooding. Or some food item, or some clothes, or some car, something one keeps brooding, or some person. The more I associate, I plus this object is equal to happiness. That is called fancifully imagining. That this object, that person, this situation, that will make me happy. And one starts building in one's own mind. One starts enjoying pleasure mentally. So that brooding gives rise to attachment. So mentally I am getting attached to it by that brooding. Constantly I think about it. So when I do that, naturally the desire to possess it will arise. See, if I appreciate an object, let us say there is a beautiful rose and I appreciate it, what a lovely rose it is, so nice petals, such nice fragrance, such a wonderful flower, I admire it. No problem. I see some nice chocolate cake, I admire it, very good. Nothing wrong with admiration, nothing wrong with appreciation. Nothing wrong if you even feel that this is so nice. But the problem starts when I start imagining myself with that object being more happy than what I am now. Then slowly that association starts mentally. One sure formula for sorrow, if you want, you can try it. And if it doesn't work, money back guarantee. What is that sure formula? Don't be happy with what you have, crave for what you don't have. That is the trick of the mind to make us miserable. 30 dresses I may have, but no, I want that 31st one. Now the wedding season will start. My God. You can watch. For 1 hour, that lady has to wear that dress, or that man has to wear that dress, only for 1 hour. And one is profusely sweating in that. Never for the lifetime afterwards one will wear it. But, brood, which dress, that dress, this how will I look, and what kind of jewelry, and what kind of, all that brooding will start. After that 1 hour one is waiting, when I can remove it. And you can't give it to somebody else also. You can't wear it also. Happily put it in nice silk cloth and save it for posterity. The next generation is not going to wear it also. But save it. But the mind broods. So when I start associating that way, that something when I have, then I will become more happy. That brooding is the first step of the fall. And generally the mind is not alert. When the mind is empty, or where there is nothing much to do, let us say productively, where the mind goes, one should think. You watch where the mind goes. If it is a spiritual seeker, the mind will go on to some sadhana, it will do some japa or chant some bhajan or some kirtan, something it will do. There is a worldly mind, it will brood on some object, some memory, some situation, something. Now that brooding gives rise to attachment. That I mentally feel that without this my life is incomplete. Or without this there is not much happiness. Till I get that I won't be happy. So that sense of incompleteness is what happens when we brood. One gets attached to it, one starts depending on it mentally, that I must have it. So brooding leads to attachment. That attachment will lead to desire to possess. That desire to possess is the issue. Because now I am bound. Properly bound. Because till that desire is not fulfilled, I am miserable. I must have it. So that attachment leads to the desire to possess. Not only I must have it, somebody else must not have it before me. Then another jealousy will start. So that desire is the cause. You see, in Buddhism, there is one very important point there. Buddha said that he said desire is the root cause of evil. For common men to understand that is very important. The desire is the root cause of all evil. But for a spiritual seeker who wants to go deeper, one has to understand that desire is only the third step. How did that come? Came because of brooding. And it is not that we brood on any object. The same object is kept in front of 10 people. Not everybody will brood on that. Each one will brood on different things. So what does that show? It is not the object which is the problem. Problem is my perception. That I associate happiness with that. For some people, coming to satsang is happiness. For some people, coming to satsang is misery, pain. The object is the same. So when I associate with the object, the way in which I associate with the object is creating the difficulty. The object by itself is not creating any difficulty. So dhyayato vishayan, I brood on that. And when I brood on that, then the attachment arises. Then attachment gives rise to desire. Now when it manifests as desire, see, many times we are not even aware that desire has risen in our mind. Then what to talk of brooding? The mind is not so alert to be aware of how the desire has come because of brooding. Desire can come either because I am brooding now, in this life, or I must have done that in the past and there is a strong tendency for it. And the moment that object comes up, immediately the mind is fascinated by it and then starts brooding. So this brooding on the sense objects creates attachment creates desire. And when that desire takes hold of that person and I must have it, without this I am miserable. That non-fulfillment of desire itself creates anger. Till it is not fulfilled, there will be a certain amount of anxiety, there will be a certain amount of worry, tension, all that. And if there is some obstacle which comes in between, then so definitely the anger will arise. If it is not, if it is fulfilled, then I may fear losing it, or if that experience is over, I want repetition of the same thing. So desire will create kamat krodho bijayat, and desire will create anger. So if I didn't get that first piece of iPhone 5s and somebody else came and took it, bas. Or some way I did not manage to get it, then again there is a problem. Or my father or whoever did not approve that I must buy it. They said, iPhone 4s you have, very good, keep it. So then anger will arise. Once anger arises, what happens? Krodha bhavati sammoha. Person gets deluded. Anger is such a thing that when it comes, Shankaracharya writes in his commentary that the person becomes so deluded that one forgets even respecting other people, even respect towards elders, gurus, all that the mind will forget. Because sammoha, because anger is so overpowering, and I must have that. And sammohat smriti vibhrama. One forgets everything. Good conduct, harmony in relationship, everything gone. One will start getting angry, may get even violent, may speak bad words, anything will happen in anger. That impulsive, that momentary anger it will be. One may not even realize that if the anger is so powerful and the desire is so deep. One may not realize. So, sammoha smriti vibhrama, smriti bhramshat buddhi nasha. When this data is gone, so many times we see when people say that I got so angry, I don't even know what I said, I forgot, I don't even remember what I said, and at that point in time, I just lost all control. All the intelligence which I have, which I need to discriminate and to know this is wrong, this is right, all goes away. Smriti Bhramsha. So buddhi cannot discriminate. So buddhi becomes redundant. And that is the worst state a human being can come to, because Shankaracharya ji says that in that state, that person is incapable of achieving anything in life. Forget moksha. Even artha, kama one cannot achieve. Because when that anger comes, it destroys the whole personality. In that moment of anger, one can say anything, one can destroy relationships, one can land up doing wrong things, lose a job, reputation will go for a toss, many things can happen. So he says that the person becomes so disturbed that one is almost like one has destroyed all the four capacities in a human being to pursue wealth, happiness, righteousness and freedom, all gone. He says Purushartha Ayogya. Person becomes incapable of doing any self-effort, becomes a victim of anger. And when we can't use our intellect to discriminate, that is the destruction. Because the glory of human being is only the buddhi. In fact, if we compare at the physical level, we are no match to the animals. Nothing. They can withstand any type of weather. We can't. Sitting in the comfort of our house, it starts raining outside, we start shivering here. And they are out there withstanding any type of weather, food, water, and so much of physical power they have. But why is human being so great in the creation? Only because of the buddhi, the capacity to discriminate. And that discriminative capacity goes up. Then that person has destroyed oneself totally. So these 8 steps, though they seem like 8 steps, but it doesn't happen gradually, slowly. It happens very fast. Brooding starts, attachment, desire, anger, delusion. By the time one realizes it, it's already over. Just a few moments of brooding. Kaikeyi was given that. She was instigated to brood over that. But my son, her son will become the king. Though she loved Ram so much, few moments of brooding that when he becomes the king, it will be my son who will become the king. Whole Ramayana started. And she repented also. That why did I do that? Even in day-to-day life you will see when anger comes. That's because of some brooding. So first step one must be able to control. It's very difficult to control the first step. Most of the time we are in the 4th or 5th step. So if I have to control the first step, in our culture there is a method for it which we call as upasana. Upasana means to engage the mind using a support and to channelize it towards the higher. So you can use a mantra, you can use the form of God, you can use the breath, you can use visualization of the noble values. So when the mind is engaged in these kind of things, it will not brood. Otherwise the mind is free. How much time we have? When people say that I don't have time, it's a big myth. Externally it may be that I don't have time sometimes to do certain things, but internally how much time we have, my God. 60,000 thoughts we think. Average man thinks as 60,000 thoughts in the waking hours. How much time that is? And do we choose? Now which thought I will think? That's why one philosopher, Eknath Easwaran, he says, we don't think our thoughts think us. Whenever they want, they just come. So how do I control the brooding? Because the moment the mind is free, it starts brooding. You can do that exercise. In a day, how much do I brood? Just try to be alert for 24 hours. One day you just try to be alert. Hour by hour, if you take stock, 16 hours or 18 hours if you are awake. After every 1 hour, take a stock. What did I do in this 1 hour mentally? You will find a lot of it goes only in brooding. Imagining something, recalling some memory. So when that brooding happens, then we don't become aware, but we are getting attached. On whatever we brood, we become attached to that. We may brood on our children, we may brood on some goal I want to achieve, we may brood on some enjoyment I want to do. We can start brooding. Planning is very different. We are not talking about planning. If we have to plan to achieve something, that's a different point. That okay, this is the goal, this is what I have to do, or this is where I have to go for Diwali vacation, I am planning. That is not a problem. It is a functional thing. Brooding is a psychological phenomenon where I associate myself with it and form an equation of happiness with it. That till I don't get that, I am not happy. Or I will be more happy when I get that. So that psychological association is what creates that attachment. And the more we get attached to the objects, people and things, situations, the more we fall. Because we become dependent on them. Hence the mind needs one support to hold on to. In South India they have a tradition. The temple elephant which is there, sometimes they take out the temple elephant and they take a procession of the Lord. So the Lord will be on the elephant and the elephant goes through the streets. Now when the elephant goes through the streets, every few minutes the elephant will stop because people come, they want to do the arti of the Lord and all that. So the elephant will stop, again go. Now when elephant is going through the streets, the trunk of that elephant is very, elephant is very restless in that way. It needs something. So what the Mahout will do is give a stick to that elephant and that elephant has to hold that stick. There is no other reason for that stick. It is not that elephant needs that stick, but the trunk of that elephant has to be controlled. Otherwise the elephant will, let us say passing through the market, take away somebody's banana, take away somebody's something and start throwing it away. It will become wild. So the job of the elephant is the Mahout will give the stick. The elephant has to hold that stick. And then when the elephant is passing through the streets, everything is peaceful. If that stick is not there, unhad it. Same it is with our mind. That mind needs one stick. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say that when you are working, it is like this, the maid servant, let us say, there is a maid servant in the house who is taking care of our children. So that maid servant, when she is doing her duty in the house, taking care of the children, she is doing all her best to take care of the child here, but one part of her mind will be on her child at home. And when she finishes this duty, she goes back home, and her full attention is towards that child. So Ramakrishna used to give that example, saying that while you are working in the world, let one part of your mind be with the Lord and rest of it be engaged fully in the world. And when you are done with your work, with your entire mind, with both the hands you hold on to the Lord. That is very, very important. In the Gita, only in the 8th chapter you will find Bhagavan says, Mam anusmara yudhyacha. You remember me and you fight. Meaning keep me in your mind all the time while you are doing the duties. Work is worship only when we have that thought of dedication. When we come to Karma Yoga, we will see that. Merely I am doing work, it doesn't become worship. Just because I am doing work. A lot of people say that, Swamiji, I don't come to satsang, I don't do prayers, I don't do meditation, but for me work is worship. How? Just because I am doing work? Just because I am doing work, it doesn't become worship. Only when that work has sense of dedication, then it becomes worship. So our mind needs constantly to hold on to that which is supreme, that which is changeless, that which is infinite, that who is the Lord. If I don't hold on to that, I will always brood on things. Because my feeling is I am this incomplete being and I need something to complete myself. So whatever I feel I need to complete myself, I need money, I need power, I need fame, I need pleasure, then I will start brooding on that. And that's why Vedanta is so important for us, that when I know who I am truly, only then all this will stop. Not knowing who I am, if I just try to control the mind, it is not possible to control the mind, because the root cause is I don't know that my nature is complete. So remaining incomplete, how much can I control the mind? Not to do this, not to do that, it is not possible. I must know who I am. That's why that self-knowledge portion in the Gita which came earlier. That once I know that my nature is that which is complete, which is happiness, which is bliss, and I don't have to depend on anything outside. And every night I experience that. In the state of deep sleep, there are no objects. But I am so happy. Which means my nature is happiness. I don't need things to become happy. Even when a desire is fulfilled, what happens? The desired fulfillment only gives external, temporary pleasure or some emotional joy. The real happiness that I feel is because the mind has become quiet. And for that moment, there is no desire in the mind. I am not thinking anything else in the mind. There is no next plan which has come up. So when I start doing this, two things one has to do. One is to be clear about knowledge, that who I am. For brooding to stop, that knowledge must be very, very clear. That I am not this incomplete entity. My nature is Purnata. And second is, I must have one support system. So in the earlier days, we used to have this concept of Ishta Devata or Kul Devata. So Ishtadev means my personal God, MPG. My personal God. Means what? That form of the Lord which I love the most. There are thousands of forms of the Lord. We will take one form. So that form I love the most. And toward that form I have love in my heart. Is it not true that whatever I love, mind will go there? So if I love the Lord, mind will go there. Love is the key. Either I should love the Lord, or I should love serving a noble cause, or I should be able to abide in the knowledge that I am complete, I don't need anything else to complete myself. There are only these three methods. Hold on to any of these. Easiest of them is holding on to the Lord, because bhakti will come naturally. That's why so many festivals we have. The reason for this is that when I am worshipping different deities, then I observe that, oh, this is the deity towards which I have so much of love. Then that becomes my Ishtadevata. Then use the form of that Lord Instead of brooding on sense objects, brood on the form of the Lord. Think that how beautiful the Lord is. All the leelas of the Lord, imagine. No, but will we not get attached to that also? You won't get attached to that. Because that is not tangible outside. You will get attached to Bhagwan. And that attachment to Bhagwan will help us to drop all other attachments. And then that attachment to Bhagwan also will go by itself. That we don't have to bother. It is like this. When I have to sleep, what do? Elaborate preparation. Nice, soft, comfortable cushion bed. Put a beautiful bedsheet on that. Dim the lights. Put some nice fragrance. Some soothing music if you want. Put that good night all out. Very important nowadays. So that also may not be sufficient because that mosquito now develops immunity towards it. And the mosquito will tease you. It will go and sit on that all out only. And say, "Ab bolo, kya karoge?" Then, so better keep one racket next to you. You know, there's one racket which comes, electric racket. So keep that racket. Prepare all that. And then, lie down on the bed, take the rajai, put it on yourself, sleep happily. What do I do when I am sleeping? All this preparation I have done. When I am wanting to sleep, then there is only one thought. I want to sleep. I want to sleep. I want to sleep. If somebody comes and says, this work has to be done, don't disturb me now, tomorrow. If some thought comes to me that, I should call this person and say, no, I am very tired, I want to sleep. And when I get sucked into sleep, nobody knows. Can anybody tell the time that I slept at 10:30? Generally people, colloquially we say that, what time you slept? I think 10:30. At 10:30 you lie down on the bed. When you went into sleep, if you can tell, that means you didn't go into sleep. Nobody can say when I got sucked into sleep. But how did I get sucked into sleep? By holding on to one thought. I want to sleep. I want to sleep. I want to sleep. Same way, if I think of the Lord, Allah kept on saying Narayan, 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dhruv kept saying. So that one mantra or one form, one who holds on to that, the mind will stop brooding. Because the law of the mind is very simple. It will go where it finds happiness. That's all. There is no fault of the mind. It's not that my mind is bad if it is going towards objects. It's only ignorant. It doesn't know. It thinks that that cinema will give it happiness, that sense object will give it happiness, this person will give it happiness. It doesn't know that real happiness is in my own self. It is in my own heart. It is in the Lord. That one doesn't know. So when one comes to satsang, when one gets that knowledge, when one has that clarity, then it becomes easy to restrain the mind. By habit, please remember, mind will still go. Don't think that just by coming to satsang everything will become purified. No. Nothing will happen. By coming to satsang, I only get the knowledge and I get the right understanding. But it is hard work I have to do. As the mind goes out, put it back again. That is real hard work. And that is not 5-10 minutes in a day. It is not Sunday to Sunday mass, 20 minutes, very good, religion is over. No? Nothing will happen with that. I have to do minute by minute. Where is my mind? We have to be alert on that. So, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. So, the technique of upasana is that one holds on to a symbol, a support. Like for the patriot, one who loves the country, let us say the flag. Now, the flag is the symbol. The moment one sees the flag, one is inspired. Or the tricolor. Now, that is only paper, or that is only some, let us say, metal flag. But for that person, it is not just that. For the person, it is the feeling. So, when I have understood this fact that the real happiness is in being calm, is in surrendering to the Lord, mind will automatically start going there. For that, a certain amount of satsang and a certain amount of sadhana is important. So in the beginning, just like a plant is small, tender, then there is a fencing around that, so that it grows strong. Once it grows strong, that fencing is not required. Same way, in the beginning, one has to constantly associate with satsang, with people who are striving to walk the path. Avoid dussang, avoid company of people who distract you, who destroy the faith, who say, what is all this, you are getting more confused, more deluded, this is not the age to do all this. Then when will you do? When the teeth are falling? When one can't even hold oneself and one needs a stick at that time, where one can't even hold the mala, hand will be like that. What will we do? How will japa happen? It's difficult. So people who distract us, keep away from them. Focus on satsang, focus on one's own sadhana. And this doesn't require us to go away from the house, leave everything, ignore the duties. All that is not required. As I said earlier, while doing the duty, keep doing the duty. One part of the mind must have the feeling that I am doing it for the Lord. And when the duties are over, every day spend 10-20 minutes in trying to sit quietly and learn to tune up to the Lord. These two, if I can do, this brooding over sense objects will stop. And this is such an effective tool, because if I can control the brooding, attachment won't happen. First step itself, if I control, the rest of them don't happen. But suppose I am there on the rest of the steps also, this can still help. Suppose I am very angry, I can still use a mantra. I can still use the form of the Lord. I can still focus on the breathing and take a step back. Whichever step I am on, I can use Upasana method to bounce back, to stop the further fall. So this is one very, very nice method to give the mind a support system. That is called anchoring. Where is my anchoring? The mind is otherwise wandering all the time. It's like a monkey. It has to be tied down. What happens to us is we don't have an anchor in life. So when anchor is not there in life, even small things can disturb. But when anchor is there in life, you see the ship which comes to the harbor, how is the ship held there? It will be anchored onto the harbor. Otherwise the waves are coming, it will get carried away, it will not stay there. So what one has to do is ask oneself that what is my anchor in life? It can be a mantra, it can be form of the Lord, it can be the Guru, it can be some statement of the scriptures, it can be values. Gandhiji anchored in both name of the Lord, Ram, and value, Satyam. To such an extent that in the beginning he said God is truth. And later it changed to say that truth is God. He anchored in that Satyam, Ahimsa. So I can anchor myself in a value, I can anchor myself in the Lord, I can anchor myself in a mantra. And Gandhiji, when he did his sadhana, he was so steadfast in his sadhana. That shows that anchoring. That every morning and evening he will do his prayer without fail. And people used to be, his prarthana sabhas are very famous. And what bhajans they used to sing there. And every day he used to sing this Sthita Prajna Lakshan, chant this. In his prayers, every day Sthita Prajna Lakshan will be chanted. Because this gives us the goal of life. This is the goal, this is the path. If I chant these 18 verses every day, I remain focused. This is what I have to achieve in my life. Essence of whole spiritual path is in this. So he chanted. And he used to say that when I die, if you don't hear Ram Nam from my lips, consider that my sadhana is futile. That much Shraddha he had in his own sadhana and in the grace of the Lord. And it happened. Point blank range he is shot and he says, Ram. That is the depth of the sadhana. So a person who is able to do like that, one has to anchor. Those who are anchored, these things don't trouble. Our difficulty is only because we are not anchored. So one has to find, as soon as I can, I have to get anchored. And that is hard work. Don't bother about anything else. The world has its own ways and it will keep going. If I have Shraddha in one form, in one mantra, in one practice, do it. There's a lot of these new age philosophies. There are some people, who do what we call as spiritual shopping. They will do spiritual shopping. Go to one path, try that for 2 days, try that for 2 months, then after that stop that, go to another one, try that, and they will come and tell us proudly also, I have tried that, then you say, I have tried this, that, all this. घाट घाट का पानी पिया, अरे क्यों पिया? Why did you drink? If you are experimenting to find one path, wonderful, do it. But find one path and be steadfast in that. That's it. That is most important. Today we don't find that happening because people are scared of committing. If one is scared of committing to an individual or an organization, that is very clearly understandable because it's not easy to do that. But why not commit to the Lord? The Lord is not going to take us for a ride. Choose one Ishta Devata, choose a mantra and keep doing the sadhana. How many thousands of people across the world over so many years have anchored themselves? One of the greatest devotees of Sri Krishna is called Ras Khan. He was a Muslim. But he anchored in Krishna Bhagavan. If you read his compositions, they are so wonderful. He had darshan of the Lord and all that happened to him. And when you read the composition, devotion is involved in our heart also. Because that person anchored in it. So one has to find that anchor. So dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu upajayate. Our mind binds us when it gets attached to objects. And the same mind liberates us when it gets detached from the object. So there is a mantra of the Upanishad which says, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. Mind only is the cause of bondage, mind only is the cause of liberation. How? Bandhaya vishaya sakta. That mind which is attached to objects is the cause of bondage. And that mind which is detached from the objects is the cause of liberation. So dhyayato vishayan pumsa. One is the brooding can stop by upasana. Sangasteshu upajayate. Attachment arises towards it. Attachment also can go when I know clearly the joy of detachment. How much detachment I have, that much more love I have. There are a lot of false notions we have about attachment. That's why we are scared to be detached in life. Because the moment we say detachment, what does one think? It's a very heavy duty word. Detachment. Swamiji, detachment is not for me. I am a householder. I have family. I have children. If I become detached from them, how will the family run? If you become detached from them, family will run more harmoniously. Why? Because my capacity to love will increase. Because attachment is that which clouds our vision. When attachment goes away, in detachment one is so clear. What the opposite person wants, one is able to do and give. They are also happy, you are also happy. And there is a freedom, there is a space. Otherwise, don't you hear in household life only, people say, no, I am tired, I am sick, give me my space. So modern word for detachment is space, that's all. Old fashioned word is detachment. So if I learn the joy of detachment, that's why the symbol of lotus leaf is given. That lotus leaf is born in water, stays in water, goes back into water, but doesn't get affected by water. So when I am living in the world, I must have that detachment. In attachment, I am more important. In detachment, beloved is more important. There will be more sensitivity, there will be more joy. So brooding stops by holding on to a support. Attachment stops when I feel the joy of detachment, when I am able to serve, when I am able to give, desire which arises in the mind. The moment I have a goal in life, my desires can get channelized and I can eliminate all that which is not necessary. What happens to us is, our difficulty is that that goal which is there in life is only a temporary goal. It doesn't require me to live in self-control. It's a functional goal outside. I must achieve this target, I must have this home, I must have this promotion, I must have that status. It's an external goal, which doesn't need me to live in a certain self-control, live in selflessness, live in a certain holding on to values. But if moksha becomes my goal, that I want freedom or I want happiness, then whatever is required for it I will do. So the goal must be an internal goal. Moksha is the highest goal. But internally I can keep many other steps in my life as the goal. That I want to increase my willpower. So I take up this vrata. That okay, I will do meditation every day for 20 minutes. Come what me. Or I will go for jogging 15 minutes in the morning every day. Some goal internal. Or I will practice forgiveness for the next 1 month. Internal goal, so that I grow in my emotional maturity. So if there is such a desire to grow within, the desire for external things, etc., will slowly wither away. Because the joy of self-mastery is incomparable. The joy of surrender is incomparable. So if I have a desire that I must be one with the Lord, or I must experience what is this joy of single-pointedness, there are so many things that one can do that way. But generally the mind is extroverted, that's why one is not able to experience these. So if I have these internal goals, my desire will be channelized towards all those. Selfless. Another way to handle this desire is that let me become as selfless as possible and inculcate seva bhav in my mind. Because when desire is there, why is the desire there? Because of selfishness. That when I get this, then I will become happy. So I am thinking about this I. In selflessness, when I serve, in that service I find joy. In making others happy, I find joy. In contributing to a noble cause, I find joy. Helping children to grow, to become great leaders, that I find joy. And I don't have to go anywhere else. Social service does not mean I go somewhere else outside and serve some children in the orphanage. That is extra work. If I want to do, I can do. My own child, do I bring that child up with selflessness? Do I teach my child to put nation above self? Do I teach that child that you hold on to these values and don't compromise there? The joy of that is very different. Because then I am focusing on what we say, the art of man making. That child is growing with such values to become a strong child. And it is not impossible. One Jijabai created Shivaji. That much of faith and that much of courage she had within herself to instill that in Shivaji. Vivekananda's mother created him. So that itself is a joy, where it is not that my child has to be top, my child has to be a number one. Then there is selfishness, then the desire comes, then the attachment comes, then all kinds of things will come. But if that minus goes, here is the child, and the potential of the child is so much. And here is what I can do to make that child a contributor to the society. How many of us even think? And then we complain that society is going from bad to worse, there's corruption happening all over, nothing will be done, politicians are doing this, that. We are only to blame because we have taught the children to be selfish from childhood. Maximum what we say, you share with children, with other friends, whatever you get, chocolate you get, you share. Good clothes you have, you share. That's all. So for that child, what is the message? Selfishness is the general way to live. Now and then I should share. And that's the message that goes. On Diwali, I go to the poor people, I distribute some good clothes, crackers, sweets. On my birthday, I will, at my 20th birthday, then I call 20 people, give them scholarship, all that. Which is no problem, one can do that. But in general, can I teach these things to the child, that to be selfless? That itself is a seva. Keeping the nation in the mind that my country needs this kind of leaders. People who have vision, people who can keep country about the self. Then that's a seva to the country. So selflessness, in whichever way I can practice selflessness, the power of desire will become weak in our life. So even if there is a strong desire to possess something, expand the scope of that. Make it selfless. If I want to look beautiful, make 20 other people look beautiful. You will see automatically that the desire which was so concentrated on me, it will become diluted. So slowly that power of desire will get weak. So brooding goes by upasana, attachment goes by learning to inculcate detachment, desire goes by selflessness. I am giving different means. Any one will help to do everything else also. Upasana by itself will help to do all this also. I am just giving different means so that whichever one appeals to whoever, one can start. Anger goes by inculcating compassion, empathy and forgiveness. 3 things. Of course, anger goes by detachment, that I have already said. The more attachment I have, more anger I will have. More detachment I have, less angry I will be. Anger goes by compassion, forgiveness and empathy. The ability to see from somebody else's standpoint. Anger comes to us mainly because I am obsessed with my desire, my way. If I can see that why is this person even doing it, what is the situation of that person, empathy will come in one's heart. Anger can reduce. Even after that, if somebody has done some harm, if I have forgiveness in my heart, I can free myself from anger. And anger also goes by acceptance. If somebody has not harmed me, done nothing to me, yet when life is not able to give me what I really want, if I can accept, okay, this has come, fine, anger goes. The next shloka will talk about that, so I will go into the elaborate detail about acceptance in that shloka. But how acceptance is so important. So anger can go by acceptance. So these are various ways, and if these happen, any of these we can apply, then the fall can be stopped.
You see, brooding by what? Upasana.
Brooding will go by upasana.
And desires by?
Selflessness. The more selfless I become, the weaker the desire will be. Because then the bhavana is to serve. Selfishness is the nucleus of desire.
Sometimes anger may not be towards generally a person. Almost it's also sometimes pent up, which could be over a period of time where you feel you've been wrong or you didn't deserve something.
Right.
What is one you
That's where acceptance is. No? Whatever has happened, I must accept it, that fine. I today feel that I have been wrong because I am seeing it from this limited perspective. 3 ways are there to accept anything. One way is the way of karma. That whatever I have got is because of some karma. It is not coming to me randomly. Because why it is coming to me only? And at this point in time. If I believe that everything is a chance, that is not an intelligent argument. Then I can put an apple seed and I don't know what will come out of that. It is just chance. But there is a logic, cause and effect is happening. So either it is karma, that whatever comes to me, I accept it, that I will get only what I deserve. And whatever I deserve, nobody can prevent that from me. No power in the world can snatch away from me what I really deserve. How much ever anybody tries. And no power in the world can save me from facing what I deserve. I have to face it because that's my karma. So either because of karma, one accepts it in complete dignity that this has come to me because of my karma. This life's karma, past life's karma, whatever it is, there is a law operating, a law of karma. Accept. Or accept it in complete surrender that Bhagwan knows what is the best. If this has come to me at this point in time, let me accept it. I may not like it. It may not be pleasant for me right now. Because I may not be able to see complete picture. Eventually, many times have we not seen that at that moment we are so disturbed, but after 5 years, 7 years, we realize it's so good if that happened. If that had not happened, we would have been somewhere else only. So either through complete surrender, or through understanding of karma, or through this complete understanding that life is temporary. Everything comes and goes. Even this will pass away. Hold on to that attitude that I am a witness, everything comes and goes. Nothing is permanent. In this temporary world, what insistence then I will have? When everything is moving, everything is changing, and nothing is going to remain with me, what insistence? Even if I get what I want, how does it even matter? Because it's not going to remain. Even as I am getting it, I think it remains with me, but it is already changed. The same person I fell in love with, you are not the same person. Hello, every minute you are changing. What a false myth it is to think that you are the same person. You yourself are not the same person. That opposite person can say that. So the idea is what? One who knows this very deeply. Buddha understood this, that life is momentary. He became free. He didn't become pessimist. Many people think Buddha is a pessimist. He is not a pessimist. He understood very clearly life is momentary. Everything changes. That's why I said Sarvam Kshanikam Kshanikam. Everything is momentary. In that momentary life, what am I trying to hold? It's like the river. No? River is constantly flowing. Can I try to hold one handful of water? I will try to hold that one handful of water, but the river is not going to stop. It will go. If I keep my hand in that river and I feel that this water is not changing, no, it is flowing constantly. It's not the same water. So either of these three ways are there to accept life as it comes. These are deeper philosophies of life. And as my view of life is, that way my way of life will be. If my view of life is that everything is momentary, I won't insist. If my view of life is that the Lord does everything for the best, but my way of life will be accept. Everything I accept, that it comes to me. Even my agitation which comes to me, the devotee accepts that yes, this agitation has also come now by His grace only. More and more one thinks of the Lord. All that dissolves. This appears very difficult in the beginning. But that's why I said anchoring. One is to anchor in a method, other is to anchor in a philosophy. If both these are there in our life, we are set. We don't need anything more. What generally people do is anchor in either one. So they will anchor in a method. Keep on doing puja. But the philosophy is not clear. And when difficult time comes, then they get shaken up saying, मैंने इतना पूजा किया, कितने नारियल फोड़े, क्या फायदा? भगवान ने मुझे ये कर दिया. As though Bhagwan was counting, तुमने 10 नारियल कम फोड़े, इसलिए मैं तुमको punish करता हूँ. Why? Because the philosophy is not strong. And there are some people who dry intellectual, philosophy all the time. Everything is momentary. So what? Eat, drink and enjoy. No self-control, no withdrawal, no sadhana, nothing. Swamiji, there is no need of meditation. I am doing meditation 24 hours. Walking meditation, eating meditation, talking meditation. But where is your mind? In food. Not in Bhagwan. So that philosophy is not there or practice is not there. In our culture, it is so beautifully integrated. Both are there. Way of life is also there, view of life is also there. A real religion is that which gives us both. Today a lot of people have this very famous dialogue, keep saying, Swamiji, I am spiritual, I am not religious. What? I am spiritual, not religious? Because one doesn't know. Because one equates religion to war, one equates religion to fanaticism, one equates religion to fundamentalism. So then naturally one will say that I am not religious, I am a ritualist and all that. But that is only one part of religion. Religion is, the definition of religion is spirituality plus rituals. Philosophy plus rituals. Both. Any science, will it not have both these? Physics, does it not have pure science and applied science? It will have. And is any one enough? Only pure science. No applied science. Useless. Only applied science and no pure science. Again useless. So inner seekers like both are required. So if I say I am only spiritual, not religious, you see how many people are there. They are these people who will think about philosophy of life, but their philosophy will remain only superficial level. In practical life it will not apply. And then they only will come back to us saying, Swamiji, can you tell us something practical to do? Now why you need practical to do? Because mind needs a support, right? So what is that support in which I anchor? That is the practical part. So hold on to the name or the form or the mantra. And the philosophy. That in which philosophy am I anchored? Am I anchored in devotion? Am I anchored in knowledge? Am I anchored in service? What am I anchored in? Both these come together. That person is set. And that's all our children need. They need both. And such a beautiful method we have in our culture, that when they are children, when their minds are available to mold, at that time give them the practice. Let them learn the shlokas and the chanting and the mantras and the prayers, and let them do all the, upvas and all that, let them do. As they grow up, give them the philosophy behind it. Then they will know very clearly why they did what they did. What we try to do is, until they know why they are doing it, till then we will not teach. By the time you have lost control, then he doesn't want to learn. So we have to do both. At that small age, logic is not required. Is he not learning nursery rhymes? Do you teach nursery rhymes with meaning? But we intellectualize so much, No, Swamiji, in that young age right now, not required. When he will grow up or she will grow up, they will know. I tell you, we are running this Chinmay nursery here. How many parents come, and when we tell them that we are imparting culture, we impart our values through stories, prayers, bhajans, all that, people have aversion. They don't want to put the kids here. Why? Because they are scared. कि पता नहीं क्या सिखा देंगे मेरे बच्चे. And then they will put them into some other places where all this is not there, because they think this is all confusion of the mind. Where there is no such religious tag, secular. Where they will only teach ABCD, nursery rhymes, make them play some games, do some crafts, all that. But what about life building skills? What about passing on the culture, the tradition, the values? That is so important. We are not saying this because we want more people to join this nursery, but we are saying this as a philosophy of life, that when children are there, they need at that age, in our culture you have the word called samskar. Samskar means to put an impression. That mind is so young, and that young age, if the impressions are created, nice spiritual impressions are created, that will serve the child for whole life. The best service that one can do to a child is impart spirituality as early as possible. The practice first, and then as the child grows up, the philosophy behind it. Both these must come. So that way, if this is there, then this whole ladder of fall, that will not happen. Now Bhagavan goes ahead to explain that this was the characteristic of somebody who was not able to follow the sense control, and that person fell. How is a man of realization able to live in the world amidst all the sense objects without brooding? And objects don't disturb that person. That we will see tomorrow. So tomorrow we will conclude, and our next session will be in November from 11th to 13th. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Will you email the talk to me? This talk, can you email today's talk?
Yeah, I will do that.
I don't think today's talk was recorded.
I will send it.
You can send it by email.
I will send it.